ਇਕ ਓੰਕਾਰ ਸਤਿਨਾਮ ਕਰਤਾ ਪੁਰਖ ਨਿਰਭਉ ਨਿਰਵੈਰ ਅਕਾਲ ਮੂਰਤ ਅਜੂਨੀ ਸੈਭੰ ਗੁਰ ਪ੍ਰਸਾਦਿ ਜਪ ਆਦਿ ਸੱਚ ਜੁਗਾਦਿ ਸੱਚ ਹੈ ਵੀ ਸੱਚ ਨਾਨਕ ਹੋਸੀ ਵੀ ਸੱਚ ਇਕ ਓੰਕਾਰ ਸਤਿਨਾਮ ਕਰਤਾ ਪੁਰਖ ਨਿਰਭਉ ਨਿਰਵੈਰ ਅਕਾਲ ਮੂਰਤ ਅਜੂਨੀ ਸੈਭੰ ਗੁਰ ਪ੍ਰਸਾਦਿ ਜਪ ਆਦਿ ਸੱਚ ਜੁਗਾਦਿ ਸੱਚ ਹੈ ਵੀ ਸੱਚ ਨਾਨਕ ਹੋਸੀ ਵੀ ਸੱਚ ਇਕ ਓੰਕਾਰ ਸਤਿਨਾਮ ਕਰਤਾ ਪੁਰਖ ਨਿਰਭਉ ਨਿਰਵੈਰ ਅਕਾਲ ਮੂਰਤ ਅਜੂਨੀ ਸੈਭੰ ਗੁਰ ਪ੍ਰਸਾਦਿ ਜਪ ਆਦਿ ਸੱਚ ਜੁਗਾਦਿ ਸੱਚ ਹੈ ਵੀ ਸੱਚ ਨਾਨਕ ਹੋਸੀ ਵੀ ਸੱਚ ਇਕ ਓੰਕਾਰ ਸਤਿਨਾਮ ਕਰਤਾ ਪੁਰਖ ਨਿਰਭਉ ਨਿਰਵੈਰ ਅਕਾਲ ਮੂਰਤ ਅਜੂਨੀ ਸੈਭੰ ਗੁਰ ਪ੍ਰਸਾਦਿ ਜਪ ਆਦਿ ਸੱਚ ਜੁਗਾਦਿ ਸੱਚ ਹੈ ਵੀ ਸੱਚ ਨਾਨਕ ਹੋਸੀ ਵੀ ਸੱਚ ਇਕ ਓੰਕਾਰ ਸਤਿਨਾਮ ਕਰਤਾ ਪੁਰਖ ਨਿਰਭਉ ਨਿਰਵੈਰ ਅਕਾਲ ਮੂਰਤ ਅਜੂਨੀ ਸੈਭੰ ਗੁਰ ਪ੍ਰਸਾਦਿ ਜਪ ਆਦਿ ਸੱਚ ਜੁਗਾਦਿ ਸੱਚ ਹੈ ਵੀ ਸੱਚ ਨਾਨਕ ਹੋਸੀ ਵੀ ਸੱਚ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ 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 ਗਿਆਨ ਧਿਆਨ ਕਿਛ ਕਰਮ ਨ ਜਾਨਾ ਨਾਹਿਨ ਨਿਰਮਲ ਕਰਨੀ ਸਾਧ ਸੰਗਤ ਕੈ ਅੰਚਲ ਲਾਵਹੁ ਬਿਖਮ ਨਦੀ ਜਾਇ ਤਰਨੀ ਗਿਆਨ ਧਿਆਨ ਕਿਛ ਕਰਮ ਨ ਜਾਣਾ ਸਾਰ ਨ ਜਾਣਾ ਤੇਰੀ ਸਭ ਤੇ ਵੱਡਾ ਸਤਿਗੁਰ ਨਾਨਕ ਜਿਨ ਕਲ ਰਾਖੀ ਮੇਰੀ तेरे जोर मैं गूंगा कहता हूँ तेरा सदका तेरी शरण
सतनाम श्री वाहिगुरु साहिब जी सुनिया सिद्ध पीर सुरनाथ सुनिया धरत धवल आकाश सुनिया दीप लो पाताल सुनिया पोहे न सकै काल नानक भगता सदा विगास सुनिया दुख पाप का नाश सुनिया सिद्ध पीर सुरनाथ
ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ। ਧੰਨ ਧੰਨ ਸਤਿਗੁਰੂ ਭਗਤ ਭਾਵਨ ਪਤਿਤ ਪਾਵਨ ਭਗਤ ਵਛਲ ਕਿਰਪਾ ਦੇ ਖਜ਼ਾਨੇ ਜੋਤ ਰੂਪ ਧੰਨ ਧੰਨ ਸ੍ਰੀ ਗੁਰੂ ਗ੍ਰੰਥ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਜੀ ਦੀ ਸਾਜੀ ਨਵਾਜੀ ਸਾਧ ਸੰਗਤ। We gathered here today to hear the 8th body of Sri Japji Sahib. We've been following the discussion of Tan Sri Guru Nanak Dev Sahib Ji with the Siddhs through their travels, which was then put in the form of Sri Japji Sahib in this order by Tan Sri Guru Angad Dev Sahib Ji. Over the previous weeks, we've heard a key message about how we can attain liberation, how we can become one with Waheguru Ji. The path a Sikh, a person must follow or must go through. That path was given to us in a Pangati in an earlier body. Gaviya, Suniya, Man Rakhiya, Bhav. We must first sing Gaviya, sing the praises of Waheguru, of God. And then the 3 steps to gain that liberation. Suniya, we must listen. Maniya, we must believe. And then Nidyasan, we must act. So Gaviya, we start singing the praises. Suniya, we listen. Man, we start believing. Rakhiya, Bhav, and we found as we developed the earth of this Pangati that we must act when we start believing, act on the message of Tan Sri Guru Nanak Dev Sahib Ji, and then we will develop Bhav, which is love of Waheguru, and we can become one with Waheguru. So as the Siddhs are having this discussion with Tan Sri Guru Nanak Dev Sahib Ji, the question they ask Sadhguru Sahib Ji this time was, you've emphasized those 3 steps: listening, believing, and then acting on the message. Could you develop the importance of listening? And Sri Guru Nanak Dev Sahib Ji discusses and expands on the importance of listening to Naam, listening to the Gurbani, listening to the Waheguru or Mool Mantar when you're reciting it. And they expand on the importance of that in the next 4 bodies. So this week is the 8th body, and they expand on that in 4 bodies, listening, the importance of listening. And so Sadhguru Nanak Dev Sahib Ji expands and shows the importance of listening in the following way.
Satnam Sri Waheguru Sahib Ji, Sunaya Siddh Peer Suranath.
Sunaya, listen, the importance of listening. Siddh Peer Suranath. Now Siddhs are the people that Tan Sri Guru Nanak Dev Sahib Ji is having a discussion with. In historical texts there were said to be 84 Siddhs. Now Siddh translated is an ascetic, a yogi, somebody who practices yoga, somebody who practices yoga, and through those positions and techniques they try to develop and find the oneness with God. So that's a Siddh. Another definition of a Siddh could be like a sadhu, a spiritual person, a spiritually perfect person. Peer is translated to be a spiritual teacher. Actually, Peers are known in the Islamic faith as an Islamic teacher or as an Islamic preacher, a religious guide. Sur are the Devi Devtas, the deities, the demigods, those that are believed by obviously the Hindu faith. And Nath is the king of the Siddhs. So it's the greatest yogi. That's who you call a Nath. So Tan Sri Guru Nanak Dev Sahib Ji replies to the Siddhs that all these types of spiritual or religious people, you yourselves the Siddhs, due to your past actions, due to you listening to the name of the Lord in your previous lives, you have become Siddhs today. You have become spiritual people. The Peers, the spiritual teachers, they have listened to the God, to Waheguru's name and their teachings in their past lives, and they become Peers. The Devi Devte only became them, these deities, these demigods, because they had listened. They had concentrated on the name of the Lord in their previous lives. And then, obviously, the Nath, the king of these yogis, the king of the Siddhs, known to be Gorakh, he became, or they become Naths, these kings of yoga, the great yogis, through listening. That's how important the listening is. So due to their past lives, in their past lives they would have listened, and hence they have reached those levels of spirituality in that life. If we take that further, how does that apply to us? Well, a Sidd, like say, we can describe that as being a perfect religious person. Sidd, he's complete. If we listen to the Gurbani, if we try to concentrate on it, then we can become perfect people, or we can become like the Sidds, perfect religious people, as they would describe themselves. We gain all knowledge, so we become spiritually knowledgeable, so we become peers. We become on the same level of the demigods. We develop spiritually as far as them and further than them. If we listen, if we concentrate on what we're saying, or we listen to what the Ragi is singing in the Kirtan Shabad, the person who is doing the Katha, if we listen and concentrate, if we listen to the Parti Singh who's doing the part, we surpass these demigods spiritually, and then we can obtain the Nath, the Master Lord Waheguru. So this first stage is about listening. It doesn't say anywhere when you say listen that you have to really, at this point, understand what is being said. So this stage on the spiritual path is just about listening, making sure what is being said, or what you are saying, or what you're listening to, the Kirtan, the Katha, the Part, you make sure that it's going into your ears. And in the first instance, it would go on your physical ears, which are stuck obviously either side of your heads. And then as you develop spiritually, you can listen through your internal ears. So the importance is listening. Although we feel we may not understand everything all the time, we don't understand what is being said in the Part, in the Kirtan, or what we're reading, or Waheguru, we don't fully understand the meaning of the Mool Mantar. The key is to listen to what you're saying. Make sure you recite loud, and make sure it goes into your ears. You try and block everything else out, and you can reach these stages of spirituality. If we take this further again, Peer in Punjabi can be translated to mean a pain. Sidd means this pain is sorted out. So your pains are sorted out if you listen. They get cleared. You can have physical pains, you can have mental pains, and you can have worries and doubts and depressions. All these pains, which in Gurbani is described as tinne taap, are cleared. They get sorted out if you listen. So this is again just listening. Again, I haven't developed onto trying to understand at this stage. This is listening. We get a lot of people saying to us, we shouldn't recite Gurbani, it's just like reading it parrot fashion. You're just reading over and over. But Tan Sri Guru Nanak Dev Sahib Ji is telling us very early on in Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji's Bani, very early on in Sri Japji Sahib, that there is a massive importance to listening, just listening. Because all our pains are taken away. If we take further, what's the biggest pain? The biggest pain is being born over and over in these 8.4 million life forms. In these species, 8.4 million species that Waheguru has created and put on this earth. That is the biggest pain. And just by listening, even that gets sorted out. We get taken out of that cycle of births and deaths, and we become one with Waheguru and get liberated. So we get one with Waheguru, Sur Nath. Nath is the master of the deities, the demigods. Because in those days, the Sidds believed in the Hindu faith that the demigods were actually different forms of Waheguru. But the Gurus, through their Bani, have taught us that even these demigods, these Devi Devte, made mistakes. They fell through the 5 chores, Kam, Krodh, Lobh, Moha, Ahankar. So they were nowhere near Akal Purkh Waheguru. And a Gursikh, a Sikh who follows the spiritual teachings of Sri Guru Nanak Dev Sahib Ji, surpasses that spiritual stage where these demigods are, and they obtain the true master, the master of these, the Nath of these, and they obtain Waheguru. So just by listening, we can go all the way in the spiritual stages and attain liberation. So by listening to that Bani, to that Katha Kirtan, to the Waheguru Mantar, Naam that we're reciting in Mool Mantar, we understand about the Tarti, the earth, Akas, the skies. And Tawal. Now the word Tawal is the support of the world, of the earth. Now in mythological texts and the Hindu texts, they believe that the earth, the world that we're living in, is held up by a, supposedly it's being supported by the mythological bull, and it's being held up by his two horns. Now it's obvious now that that isn't the case, but a lot of very, very old religions still believe that there's a mythological bull that holds up the world and props it up in this position. So the word Tawal is that support of the world. Now as Sikhs we don't believe that, because we know Waheguru is all powerful. But what does hold up the world? Later on in Japji Sahib we'll hear Taul, Taram. Taul, another word for this Tawal, this support of the world, is Taram. Taram is faith. What keeps this world going, in other words, supporting this world, is faith. So understanding of how the world, and developing that further, the universe and how it goes around, this galaxy, and how the planets go around the sun, and then how this galaxy fits into the universe. By listening we get to understand all of that. We get to understand all about this creation. We get to understand about the skies and how the world is supported and propped up and goes around the sun. By listening we get to understand, our knowledge develops so much that we understand all this, of why we were created and what is the meaning of life. Now if we take that further, like I've already mentioned, Tawal means Taram. Okay, so as Sikhs we don't believe that the world is propped up by this bull. We believe the world is supported by faith. Now what does it mean by supported? It means that the world continues with the asra, with the support of faith. Because if there was no faith in the world, then we would be in a very, very damaging situation. There would be cynicism. As it were in Kaljug now, there's a lot of that already. And it's faith that keeps people going. Faith in Akal Purkh Waheguru Ji. Taking this further spiritually, Tarat, the Tarti is the low, obviously is lower, and Akas is the sky. So, by having faith and listening to the Bani, and listening and concentrating on the Katha Kirtan and Naam, we gain humility, which is in the form of this Tarti, which is obviously low down. We gain humility and we reach the sky. We reach, if we want to take the Akas as being Waheguru again, the skies. So we gain humility and then we reach and we earn liberation by constantly repeating the name of Waheguru. So again, Sunaya, it's all about listening. So anybody saying that we shouldn't read Bani or recite Gurbani in parrot fashion because you don't understand with what you're saying, Guru Nanak Dev Sahib Ji is saying again that the importance of listening. Listening is the key, because that is the start of the spiritual stage. Listening to what is being said, what is being sung. It's very, very important. We gain humility. We attain Akal Purkh Waheguru Ji through the faith we have in that listening. Sri Guru Nanak Dev Sahib Ji, if we develop this further, Akas can also mean heavens. Now the next Pankti is going to develop on that. So just by listening, deep is translated to the continents. Okay? The continents of the world. And obviously we know there's 7 continents in the world as we are described now. Lo is Lok. There is 14 Loks. Now, Lok can mean, you could say the planets, but we know there's infinite number of planets in the universe, and Sri Guru Nanak Dev Sahib Ji will explain that later on. But these are like spiritual or realms. It's said that there's 14 of these, 14 Loks. What we're on now is called Marthalok. It's described as being Marthalok, the realm or the plane that we're on now. And there's 14 of these planes, and the heavens are contained within these loks. And Patal, in the very, very old religions, they believe that hell was underground. And Patal, if you talk literal translations, it could mean the layers underground, and the layers of how this world is made. And there's 7 of those layers, it said, in very, very old texts. But we, as Sikhs, realize that if we just dug underground, we won't find hell. It would just be earth, and the layers of the earth, we'd come to those. So again, Patal, just like those loks, the 14 loks, or the 14 planes and realms, Patal has those kind of realms and planes as well. So these are not necessarily physically attained. They are, as we continue listening, we understand how this is all set up, and we understand about the heavens and the hells. Now, Sikhs don't believe in ultimately going to heaven. Many of the faiths talk about a heaven. Guru Nanak Dev Sahib Ji teaches us there's many, many heavens and there's many, many hells. And those are attained by people who do pun or pap. Pun means good and pap means bad. Now Sikhi is outside of good and bad. Sikhi is about hukam and following the command and understanding the command and the order of Waheguru and living in that pana. We've heard about that in the earlier body of Japji Sahib. Sikhi is about that. So by listening, you get to understand how all this creation is put together. What happens when we die? Where do people go who are involved in pun pap, good and bad? And what happens to them? Asakhi at the time of Sri Guru Har Gobind Sahib Ji. Now the 6 Gurus spent a lot of time in the north of Punjab in a place which is now called Sri Har Gobindpur, named after Sri Guru Har Gobind Sahib Ji themselves, because they spent quite a bit of time there. Obviously in India now even, and in the times of the Gurus, the Hindu faith was there as well, especially in Punjab. And there was a Pandit called Nityanand who was doing the Katha or the discourse of one of their scriptures, the Purans, the Gohaj Puran. And within that Puran it talks about what happens to people when they die. And he was doing this discourse, and while he was doing this discourse he described that when a person dies, because he was doing this discourse from his scriptures, when a person dies, if they have done good in the world, they get taken to the heavens in carriages. If they have done bad, they get taken to Dharmaraja, and on the way, when they get taken to Dharmaraja, they get a lot of pain by the angels of death, the Jamdud, along that path until they go to Dharmaraja, and then they are judged, and then it is decided whether they go into heaven or hell. And while he was doing this discourse, there were some Sikhs listening, because just like now in India, when there is prachar or preaching going on, whether it be from a gurdwara or whether it be from a Hindu mandir, usually you have the speakers on and you can hear outside in the villages what is being said. And there was 4 Sikhs listening to this, and as he was describing, he said that the distance from this earth to what they call Parlok, the lok where Dharmaraja is, where they were going to go to Dharmaraja, is 5,000 and I think 600 or 56,000, jojans is a measure. Now 1 jojan is worth 10 miles, so that's around 560,000 miles. So this is what's in their scriptures, and he's describing this, and he says, obviously if you've done pon, if you've done good, you get taken in carriages to Dharmaraja, and then Dharmaraja judges you, and if you've done bad, you go but with the Jamdoot, the angels of death, and they give you pain along the way. And because it's so far away, it takes a year to get there. A year in our time. And these 4 Sikhs were listening. And as he came out, after he'd given his discourse, the Sikhs were talking between themselves outside because they'd heard this. And he listened to what they were saying. One of the Sikhs, the first Sikh, said that this Pandit said that it takes a year to go there. He says, with Guruji's Kirpa, I can go there in 4 pehers. Now, what is a peher? That time of a peher is worth about 12 hours. So we have 24 hours in a day. It's described that we have 8 pehers in one day. So if we divide 24 by 8, 1 peher is worth 3 hours. He said, the first Sikh said, I can go there in 4 hours. The second Sikh said, if I have the blessings of Tan Sri Guru Har Gobind Sahib Ji, I can go there in 2 pehers. He half the time, 6 hours. The third Sikh said, I could go there in 1 peher, half the time again, 3 hours. And the fourth Sikh said, if Tan Sri Guru Har Gobind Sahib Ji, the 6th Guru, the 6th form of Tan Sri Guru Nanak Dev Sahib Ji, who is the embodiment of Akal Purkh Waheguru Ji, who came to save us in this world, with his blessings, I can go there and come back in 1 pal. 1 pal is worth about 24 seconds. And while they were discussing and having a joke between themselves, this Pandit was listening. And he got offended because he was thinking, my scriptures, our Quran, in his faith, the Hindu faith, is saying that it takes a year to go there. And he went to see Sri Guru Har Gobind Sahib Ji, and he said, your Sikhs were taking the mick out of our faith. They were disrespecting the Hindu faith. And he said, I thought the Sikh faith believes in equality for all and allows people to live under their whichever faith they want and let them practice that. And Sri Guru Har Gobind Sahib Ji said, yes, that's true. And he says, and then the Pandit goes, well, why are they telling lies? Because the Quran is the truth. And this is what it says in the Quran. Sri Guru Har Gobind Sahib Ji said, neither the Quran is false and neither the Sikhs were false in that message. And the Pandit asked Sri Guru Har Gobind Sahib Ji, how could that be? How could they be right and how could I be right? Sri Guru Har Gobind Sahib Ji said, if you recite the name of the Lord Waheguru, you will come to know, you will be blessed and you will come to know how you could be true and how they could be true. He spent quite a time reciting the name of Waheguru. So he was listening. He was listening. After such time, he came in the presence and did the darshan of Sri Guru Har Gobind Sahib Ji and fell at their feet and said, now I understand. Now I completely understand of how the Quran could be true and how your Sikhs are true. And Sri Guru Har Gobind Sahib Ji developed that the Quran is a description of people in the world that come under good and bad. They come into those actions. And so if they do good, they do get taken in carriages and they do go to Dharamraja. But at that point, if you go to Dharamraja, you're not becoming one with Waheguru because he's there to judge you. So you've done some good actions and he's going to judge you in a positive way and he may let you go to heaven. But even that time in heaven is temporary, because after those good actions that you may have done, those positive things, they are paid for with your time in those heavens, and then you have to come back into the 8.4 million lives. And those that do bad actions, they spend time in the hells, depending on a different hell, depending on the different type of bad deed they have done. And even that is temporary. So when they are paid for their bad actions, they are then put back in the 8.4 million life forms and they go in circles over and over again. So Sikhi does believe in heavens and hells, but only temporary, to be paid for their actions that they've done, and then they come back in 8.4 million lives. And Sri Guru Har Gobind Sahib Ji said that the Quran only describes these kind of people who are in that cycle. Now, Sikhi and the message of Sri Guru Nanak Dev Sahib Ji takes you out of this cycle and takes you on the third path of hukam. Again, we've discussed this in the previous podium, that it's all about understanding the hukam and understanding the actions that we have done and living this life, not getting too excited by good, not getting too sad about the bad. and living it, accepting the good and the bad as we go, but constantly remembering Waheguru with every breath. And by doing that, you come out of that cycle, and therefore you go ahead of Dharmaraja in the spiritual. Just like the previous Pankti talked about going ahead of these demigods, you go ahead of all of these deities that are doing the duty of Waheguru. Because Dharmaraja himself is doing the duty of Waheguru, judging people in Pun and Pap, in good and bad. And a Sikh who recites the name of Waheguru, who does the seva of the Saad sangat and the Guru, they come out of this circle and they then become one with Waheguru and become liberated. So by listening, just like this Pandit did, you understand how all this works. You're giving that knowledge about the deep, about the lower, about the loks and the patals. The 7 deeps, the 14 loks and the 7 patals. However, later on we will learn Patala, Patal, Lak. Actually, Sri Guru Nanak Dev Sahib Ji has told us that there's infinite patals and there's infinite akasis, infinite skies, infinite worlds. Because Waheguru Ji is infinite, he has made his creation infinite. So those, what I've described, are from the texts from many, many ages ago, and that's what many of the other faiths believe. They have a limit on a lot of these things, on the worlds, on heavens, on hells. But Sri Guru Nanak Dev Sahib Ji has taught us, and we learn this as we continue learning about Japji Sahib, that as God is infinite, then his creation is infinite as well. If we take a spiritual message out of this, deep can be translated to a candle. Low is like the light on the top of the candle. And if we take the word patal and we split up pa and then tal. Tal means sarup, the sarup of Waheguru. Pa means we attain that sarup. We become one with Waheguru. So if we listen, just like a candle, the light on the candle, which flickers, so it's not steady, it flickers like our mind is flickering, constantly thinking about things constantly. If we listen to the praises of Waheguru, if we listen to the Katha, the Kirtan, to the part, then that light of our mind which is flickering becomes steady. We can control our mind. Again, later on in Japji Sahib we'll hear about this Manajita Jagjit. That light on the candle being our body, that light being our mind, will stop flickering, we'll come to control it, and then we will find Tal, the Sarup of Waheguru, hence we'll become one with Waheguru. So, spiritually, that's the message we can take from this Pankti as well. So the key here again is listening. Many, many times we question, I don't understand, what's the point of reading Gurbani, I don't understand it. Guru Nanak Dev Sahib Ji is constantly telling us now that the first stage is listening, making sure what you say is going into your ears, making sure it's being absorbed inside. Just by listening, we gain the knowledge of the deeps, the loks and the patals. By listening, pohe na sakay kal. Kal means death. Pohe na sakay kal. Death doesn't come near a person who listens. Another quick sakhi that comes to mind, the time again of Sri Guru Har Gobind Sahib Ji. Baba Atal, one of their sons. They were a young boy who, in his young age, the sakhi goes, he was playing with his friends, he was playing cricket, and one of his friends was called Moon. And it got really late one night with them playing cricket, and it was the turn of Moon to bat, but he had to go home to sleep. And all the kids went home, and Baba Atal came back to the house of the Guru, and they promised each other in the morning that it would be Moon's turn to bat in the morning. When the morning came, Baba Atal and all the rest of the friends came to the place where they were playing, waiting for Moon to turn up because it was his turn to bat. But unbeknown to themselves, Moon had been bitten by a snake overnight and had died. And when they went to his house to bring him to say it's your turn, they found his family obviously crying because he'd passed away because a snake had bitten him. Now Baba Atal at that point said, wake up Mohan, it's your turn. And they recited Waheguru. When they recited Waheguru, Mohan stood up and became alive again. And then they took him to play cricket. Now as the Sakhi goes, Sri Guru Har Gobind Sahib Ji explains that you have to live in the command, in the order of Waheguru. And so Baba Atal actually left his body and went into the Charan of Akal Purkh Waheguru because he brought back Mohan back to life. So there's two messages here. The message is about understanding the hukam and living in that hukam. But the message I want to give from that Sakhi is Sunaya Pohe Na Sake Kal. When Baba Atal went to Mohan and woke him from his death by reciting Waheguru in front of him, Mohan listened. So by listening, that death that came nowhere near him and went away, and he became alive again. So just by listening, Kal, darkness, does not come near you. Now Kal can also mean time. So that time, that bad time, that dark time does not come near you. Kal can also mean no knowledge. So by listening, Agyanata is taken away. So having no knowledge is taken away, and you get given Brahm Gyan, you get the knowledge of Waheguru. So the key here again is listening. By listening to the Lord's name, by concentrating on it, darkness, death, badness cannot come nowhere near that Gursikh who listens to the Katha, to the Kirtan, to the Gurbani, to the Naam of Akal Purkh Waheguru.
Nanak Bhagata Sada Vigas.
Nanak, Tan Sri Guru Nanak Dev Sahib Ji is telling the Siddhs, and is telling us today, Bhagata Sada Vigas, those Bhagats, those devotees, those Gursikhs who listen to the name of God, to the name of the Lord Waheguru, Sada Vigas, they are forever happy. They're forever happy because they're listening and they're concentrating. Waheguruji develops them spiritually, and they start understanding. They start understanding, and when they understand, then they can move on to the next stage, which will be hear about. They can start believing in the messages because they start understanding. So they are forever happy. Those Bhagats, those devotees that listen to the name of Waheguru, Sri Guru Nanak Dev Sahib Ji, they're forever happy because they are concentrated on that name of Waheguru. And by listening, dukh, all our pains, pap, all those paps that we've collected in our previous lives, in the forms of these karmas that we've done, pap ka nas, they are all cleared away just by listening. All our pains and all those bad karmas that we've collected are taken away just by listening. So Sri Guru Nanak Dev Sahib Ji, in this 8th Pauri, has started the discussion with the Siddhs on the importance of listening to the name of Waheguru. So the key here in this Pauri and in the next 3 Pauris after this, because Guru Nanak Dev Sahib Ji explains the importance in 4 Pauris of listening, is that we should never ever feel that if we don't understand the Gurbani that we're reading, that we should stop reading, we should stop listening. Because listening is the first stage. If we don't ever listen, then we'll never understand, and so we won't be able to believe and act on those messages. So there's massive importance, and this last pankti, Sunaya Dukh Pap Ka Nas, just by listening, even if we spent all our lives and we never ever understood, and we constantly recited Gurbani, and repeated the name and listened to Katha Kirtan, we just listened and we never ever understood, even then Sri Guru Nanak Dev Sahib Ji is saying, Dukh Pap Ka Nas, all our pains, sufferings, all the paps that we've collected by doing bad karams, they are all cleared, and we will attain liberation. If not while we're living, definitely at the time of leaving this body, we will be taken to the Charan of Akal Purkh Waheguruji, and we'll become one with Waheguru. Explaining this 8th Pauri, I know I've made many mistakes. If I've offended anybody again, or offended any other faith by sharing the Sakhis I beg for forgiveness. The Saad sangat can forgive me. I hope Tan Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji can bless us all with the daat of Gursikhi, with the true knowledge, the true understanding, the Brahm Gyan, so we can all become one with Waheguru Ji. We can all join that ocean that is Akal Purkh Waheguru Ji and become one with them. Deho sajane si chiriyan jo hove sahib sumel
ਨਾਨਕ
ਭਗਤਾ ਸਦਾ ਵਿਗਾਸ ਸੁਣਿਐ ਦੁਖ ਪਾਪ ਕਾ ਨਾਸ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ।